Hello there, people of the internet. How's everybody doing today? I got one heck of a headache, but you know what? I'm determined to come out and make some videos. So, this is a concept that has been thrown around quite a bit over time. If I could only own 5 guns out of my collection, what are the 5 that I would pick? And for the most part, I racked my brain quite a bit on this topic. But at the same time, I think that the 5 that I picked are pretty reasonable. And whenever I explain the 5 that I pick, I am sure that many of you guys will understand my rationale behind them. All that being said, let me know what you guys' 5 are down below, because I'm kind of curious to see what 5 guns other people would pick. There's a couple of caveats though. Number 1, has to be something that you already own. If you don't own 5 guns, then tell me what guns you do have, I guess. That sounds like something somebody from the government would say. So, it's got to be something that you own. Number 2, you can't swap things that are technically not firearms. Like, for example, if I have an AR-15, I can't go out and get 10 different uppers for the AR-15 in various different calibers and barrel lengths and things like that. And number 3, what you have is what you have. You don't get to exchange parts. You don't get to swap out barrels. You don't get to do the things that us gun guys would normally do with our firearms if, say, a barrel wears out, or if, say, a bolt breaks, or if, say, your extractor decides to no longer work. If something ends up failing on your rifle, then that thing has failed on the rifle indefinitely. So this is literally just a game. This is not me advocating, hey, civilians should only own 5 guns. If that was the case, then I would definitely pick an AR with as many uppers as I could possibly get my hands on. So hopefully you guys understand the premise of what it is that we are looking at here. So in the guise of having only 5 guns, there's a couple of things I have to take into consideration. And number 1 in my book would be a universal rifle to handle most of the situations that I would come across. And there's a few things that I've been thinking about. Of course, I would lean towards the AR. One second, I gotta do a thing here because YouTube doesn't like that. I would normally be thinking about getting my hands on an AR of some kind. The big issue with the AR platform is that you tend to have parts failure typically around 5 to 8,000 rounds, and shoving 5 to 8,000 rounds through a rifle really is not that difficult if we're talking about a self-loading firearm, especially one that is intermediate that you can just pull the trigger on as fast as you can. A lot of your AR barrels, they also tend to run about 5 to 8,000 rounds before you start to see some real significant loss in accuracy. For most people, that's really not that big of a deal. However, for somebody like me who goes out and shoots regularly, I'll be honest, just because of those little nuances, because of parts wear at, say, 5,000 to 8,000 rounds, depending on your AR, there are some really high-end ARs that do run a little bit better than that. And because of the barrel life on your AR and my inability to be able to swap out parts, I just elected not to go with the AR. As a matter of fact, I would want to lean more towards something that is a 30 caliber cartridge firing gun. And so ultimately what I decided to settle on was an AK-47. This right here is a piston-operated gun. These are known for lasting a very, very long time with very, very little maintenance. The 7.62x39 is a 30 caliber round that is traveling much slower than 5.56, and as a result, the barrel life on these tends to last much longer. Sticking, say, 15,000 rounds through an AK before you start really losing accuracy is not necessarily unheard of. The big issue with these is that the ammo that exists for them tend to be quite inaccurate, and that quite inaccurate ammo has given these a pretty poor reputation, but I know how to make quite fairly accurate ammunition, so if I was going to own only one of these types of guns, this right here would probably be what I go with. I have one that has optic mounting capabilities. This way I can mount a scope to this thing if I ever decide to. This right here is actually one that I've taken hunting before quite successfully. 7.62x39 is very effective on Florida whitetail. On top of that, of course, the AK does take external magazines. You can stick on whatever capacity it is that you want. This particular one is a 20-round magazine for YouTube compliance. Yes, it is actually a 20-round magazine, but you can throw on drums. You could stick in 5-round mags if you're going hunting and have certain laws that you have to follow. There's a lot of different things that you can do with a rifle like this right here. If I wanted to, I could throw on a folding stock or something like that to make this thing more collapsible for easier storage. There's a lot of different options that I could use this AK for, but the big thing is it would last. This is one of those guns that I feel would last my entire lifetime, assuming I don't rust it out with corrosive ammunition or something like that. So ultimately I went with the AK, mainly because of barrel life. I mean I can't go out and get a new barrel, so I need something that's going to be fairly accurate for as long as possible. So that's our number one. Number two, this is one I feel like is going to get some controversy, and to be fair, I would pick something else if I had something else. I decided to go with my High Point 9mm carbine. This is one of your better options for a do-everything rifle, and I use the term rifle simply because by legal definitions this is a rifle, even though it does fire a 9mm pistol cartridge. So the 9mm is fairly capable. Anyone who thinks 22 long rifle is capable, 9mm has the same energy that 22 long rifle does at the muzzle out at 200 yards. So 9mm is plenty deadly. Most people can't shoot out to 200 yards. I myself can barely shoot out to 200 yards. This right here, this gun, actually I've accuracy tested this particular gun before on the channel. It's a 4 MOA gun. I took it out to 100 yards and shoved some 115 grain full metal jackets through it just to see what kind of accuracy I get. And that 4 MOA accuracy is the same level of accuracy as like your budget tier or rack grade AR platform. You know, 4 MOA is typically a better MOA group than what most people could shoot. But I bench rested this thing, took it out to a distance, and she shot pretty well. At those distances, I wouldn't necessarily trust 9mm to really handle most situations if we're talking about using it for hunting or using it for defense against something that is coming at you. But like I said before, most people don't really touch out beyond 100 yards. Like 100 yards seems to be the cutoff for a lot of people. As a matter of fact, go down to your local gun range and just watch the distances that people can shoot at. Every now and then you'll find someone who can actually shoot, but by a large margin, most people can't really touch out beyond 50 yards. Like 50 yards is pie plate accuracy for a random civilian without much experience holding a sniper rifle. So that's one of the main reasons why I would lean towards one of these. The ammunition is cheap, it's extraordinarily plentiful. It definitely has its pros, it definitely has its cons. You don't really got to worry about a whole lot of over-penetration like you would with a rifle if you find yourself in some sort of city environment, or if you find yourself in a situation where you got to worry about that. But it is powerful enough to be able to handle most encounters that most people would need a firearm to handle. Not only that, but 9mm is significantly cheaper than even your intermediate cartridge firing guns. Alright, so that is that one. The next one was a little bit difficult for me to decide on, but I wanted to go with a full power cartridge rifle. Ultimately, what I decided to go with, my SETME C308. I have taken this out and bench rested it before, and with me bench resting this thing, I tend to get probably about, rough estimation, 4 MOA, about the same accuracy that you would get for your budget tier AR. However, that being said, considering that I can't necessarily shoot all that well out past, say, 300 yards or so, something like this right here would give me that full power cartridge capability that is still well within my realms of capabilities as a shooter in terms of long distance accuracy. This one does have a Picatinny rail on it, so if I did feel like mounting a scope on it, and if I did feel like hand loading some ammunition, to really tune this rifle into a more accurate rifle, which I have not tried tuning ammunition for this particular rifle yet. I'm sure that if I went out and I figured out what it likes in terms of bullet weight, in terms of gunpowder, in terms of the little nuances that come into developing a good hand load for a rifle, then I could really tighten the groups on this thing up quite a bit. That being said, it is a semi-automatic self-loading rifle. It does not have a gas system. That is one less thing to fail. These are notorious for lasting for a very, very long time. The roller delayed system is just such a good system. There's very, very little that can go wrong with it. As a matter of fact, there are people like, say, Somali pirates that are still running these guns, that have been running them for decades and decades, and they are still up and going. And I think that is a real true testament to just how well these guns can last in terms of longevity. Your 308 cartridge also is not that harsh on barrels. They are known to last 10,000 plus rounds before you start seeing any real diminishing accuracy with your 308 rifle. So I think that this right here is going to be probably my best option. I do have other 308 rifles, but the other 308 rifles that I have are bolt action, and I wanted some kind of semi-auto in the event that I need these semi-auto capabilities. I do have other battle rifles that are also semi-auto, like, say, an M1 Grand, if you can see it up there. I have no idea if you guys are capable of seeing that, but those have, what's the word I'm looking for here? They have certain parameters that you have to play in part with if you want that thing to run for a long time, and if you want it to run effectively. On top of that, those are not very easy to mount optics on. Something like this right here that already has a Picatinny rail attached to the receiver would be significantly easier to mount optics on than trying to modify something onto an M1 Grand receiver. So this is my pick. 308 is also significantly cheaper than 30-06. I can get surplus 7.62 NATO for probably about 60 cents a shot, and I can buy it in bulk. Alright, now we want to start looking into some kind of survival gun. I've already showed off quite a few different options, and I think that this right here is probably going to be a good one. I was debating on 22 long rifle for a survival gun. It would be such a magnificent option for a survival gun. You can carry a lot of ammo, ammo is super cheap, and the 22 long rifle is powerful enough to handle most things that most people would need a survival gun to handle. However, whatever the 22 long rifle can do, a 12 gauge shotgun could also do it. I elected to go with my Winchester 1873, or not 1873, I got 1873 on the mind because I was messing with lever actions earlier. This is an 1897. This is a smokeless powder 12 gauge shotgun. This particular one has a 2 3/4 inch chamber. Some of your earlier ones had a 2 5/8 inch chamber, so you got to pay attention to what it is that your particular Winchester takes. I really like this gun. It does have the slam fire capabilities. I do have to bring that up, otherwise somebody in the comments below will bring that up. You got birdshot, you got buckshot, you got slugs. There's very, very, very little that you could not do with a shotgun of this magnitude. As a matter of fact, if I was going to pick just one gun, it would probably be a shotgun of some kind, simply because of the effectiveness of this platform and just how much stuff can be done with a shotgun. On top of that, I already have a 9mm PCC, which can basically do everything that the 22 long rifle would do. If I was going to use a 22 long rifle for, say, small game gathering or something like that, then a 9mm 115 grain full metal jacket would also be able to do that job. On top of that, I'd be able to have my shotgun inside of these parameters. Okay, I have one more. Now we have to look at something that I can constantly carry on my person, some kind of handgun. And this was the part where I had a lot of difficulties. Normally, I would look into a 9mm, probably double stack polymer handgun of some kind, and upon doing that, you get a variety of different options that are out there on the market, but basically all the options are going to be the same. In terms of polymer handguns, that's like the current cutting edge technology. That's what most of your average firearms are going to be. They're going to be some kind of polymer frame, double stacked 9mm striker fired handgun, similar to a Glock. But the big issue with that is I'm thinking about longevity purposes. I have seen early Glocks, like made in the 80s, approximately. I'm not quite sure how old this particular one was that I am currently thinking about. But I have seen your earlier Glocks that have just kind of had the plastic frame rot on them, and they become brittle and they start to crack, and that's just what happens to plastic over time. So I stopped looking at plastic framed handguns and I started looking at my steel framed handguns, or potentially even alloy framed handguns. There's a bunch of different options that I could have gone with, but ultimately I decided to settle on a classic 1911 simply because, in terms of practical purposes, I use the 1911 as a backup gun whenever I go hunting, just because of the areas that I hunt. There's a lot of boar, and we have panthers here. I'm in Florida, and there's things out there that would want to do you harm, and I would not trust 9mm to stop those things from doing harm. Something like a 45 ACP round would be able to handle those larger non-human threats that maybe I'm going to come across just with the things that I do once they start making themselves known to me. That being said, I'm 6 feet tall. I can handle carrying one of these in the event that I have to, and I know that I can simply because I have carried 1911s before, so I could use this as a CCW gun as well. We got the capacity issue, we got the 45 ACP not being 9mm issue, but 45 ACP is still quite easy to get, and it's not that much more expensive than 9mm. I think that considering everything that I have in my inventory, I would likely go with a 1911 platform. I specifically chose this one. This one is a Charles Daly 1911. This is one of the nicer 1911s that I have, and they're not very expensive. I got this one on sale. I can't tell you guys where. I can't tell you guys how much, just because I have been getting in trouble with YouTube for things like that. So I'm going to go ahead and not do that. But what I am going to do is I'm going to tell you that I've taken this thing out and I've shot it a bunch, and it has essentially worked flawlessly. It's worked to the point to where I would not feel bad picking this particular 1911 to carry around. And the reason why I'm picking this one and not, say, my Rock Island Armory one is because my Rock Island Armory one is significantly worn out. Like, I have stuck a lot of rounds through that particular handgun, versus this one right here, which probably has, rough estimation, 500 rounds through it, but that Rock Island Armory one probably has somewhere more like 5,000 rounds. So I'm betting that one is a little bit too worn out to make this list. That's why I ultimately decided to go with this one. Steel frame, it'll last my entire life. I think that this right here is going to be probably my best option. Alright, well, those are my 5 guns. If I could only pick 5, these are the 5 that I ultimately would pick. All that being said, I appreciate your time. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, share. Description below has a link to all sorts of stuff. Go check it out. You guys go off, have yourself a fantastic day, and I guess I will see you guys on the next episode. Been a little while since I've done this.
Bonnie and Clyde be damned. The poor man's Garen. It's a shame that bolt-action shotguns aren't more mainstream.